my eyes on you.
Sabbath Church, Pastor Helmer here saying hello, praying everyone is doing well, that you find yourself healthy, staying blessed and strong and faithful in these, as we continue to go through these odd and unforeseen times that we're living in. Pray everyone is doing well. It looks like we might be coming in towards the end of it, possibly another month. At least that's what I'm estimating myself, but please don't quote me on that. Today I want to bring you a word in 1 Samuel chapter 8. I'm going to read to you from verses 1 through 9. So if you can join me. Chapter 8, verses 1 through 9. And it says, when Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes, and they perverted justice. So Samuel has three sons. He has two sons. And he appoints them as judges. He appoints them to oversee Israel. Israel, in this current time, they're not ruled by a king. They're ruled by judges. God has judges over them. And Samuel, who is a leader amongst the prophets, he's a leader amongst the people. He's the prophet of God in this moment. They come to him, and Samuel, he's of older age. And they come to Samuel, and they say, Samuel, we need to talk to you about your kids. As we'll read in a little bit, but what we find out about the kids is that they're dishonest. They accept bribes. They're perverting justice. They're not the same person as Samuel was. So, verse 4 and 5. So all the elders of Israel gathered together, and they came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, you are old, and all your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. So they come to Samuel, all the elders, all the older people, the people of influence, those who have been appointed to oversee people. They're wise men. They're usually older men who have lived a while. They gathered together, and together they visited Samuel, and they went to his house in Ramah, in the city of Ramah. And they said, Samuel, we have a problem. And they start out in a very odd fashion. Samuel, you're old. I don't know if that's a good way to start a conversation, but this is what they said. Samuel, you're old. And we're not sure, they said, Samuel, if this is what's affecting, or if this is what's the problem, or if you haven't noticed because of this. But your kids, they don't act the way you do. They don't listen to the things that you taught them. They don't walk in your ways, Samuel. And could it be because of your age that maybe you don't see it, or you haven't heard, or maybe they don't listen to you anymore, and they don't behave like you used to. They're not even half the person you used to be. Your kids, Samuel, are not you. Actually, Samuel, I don't know if you heard, but your kids are pretty bad people. They take bribes. They're unfair judges. They pervert justice. I want to believe that Samuel, when he appointed his kids as judges, I want to believe that he appointed them because there was some good that he saw in them, that he looked at his kids and he believed that they were good kids, they were good children, that his purpose for appointing his two sons as judges is because he knew how he raised them, the things that he taught them. I'm sure that Samuel looked at his kids, and with good intention, he put them in a position of power because he believed that his kids would one day become good judges. Maybe their position had corrupted them, or the ability to be able to be bribed was just too much to handle. But there's a part of me that has to wonder. I wonder if Samuel was aware, if he had maybe possibly heard of what they had done, what they were doing. And there was gossip of Samuel's kids, and they're doing this. And I wonder if Samuel possibly heard, but he just kind of ignored it as gossip. Or I want to believe that Samuel actually didn't know. He had no idea this is who they had become. It's similar to, and I look at it as similar to the parent who has children who believe that their kids are little angels and they can do no wrong. I compared Samuel to this, and I wonder if it's the same thing. You met these parents, right? My son would never do that. My son would never say that. My daughter would never do this. I work at a school, and there's times when, unfortunately, I'm talking to a parent, and the parent says to me, well, my son would never, or my daughter would never. Well, my daughter told me, and my son told me this, and then, unfortunately, I have to show them a video of what their son is doing, which they just said that their child will never do. Or I have to present evidence to a parent that believes their child is this innocent angel. Then I have to present evidence and present the opposite of what they believe who their child is. And I hope that this is Samuel's case. I do. But I want to believe that Samuel just didn't know, like these parents didn't know, that this is who their kids have become. So the wise men make a request. They look at Samuel and they say, Samuel, appoint us a king. And it's at the end of verse 5 where he says, such as all the other nations have. Give us a king just like all the other nations had kings. Verse 6. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord. Samuel did something maybe that we all need to practice, including myself, especially myself. He was upset. He was bothered by their request. He was bothered at what they presented to him. So Samuel does something that I'm sure Samuel always did. I'm sure his mother taught him how to do. He prays. He brings it to God. He puts it at God's feet and he makes it God's problem. In verse 7 and 8, God gives a response. 7. And the Lord said to him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you who they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. As they have done from the day I have brought them out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Samuel's prayer was answered. Not always is the answers that we seek seem like they're the correct answer. They don't always seem good in our eyes. But whatever answer God gives, that's the answer. And I can assure you it's a good answer. Samuel receives an answer and God responds and he says, give them what they desire. Give them what they want. Whatever it is they're asking you for, just give it to them. Don't feel bad, Samuel. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. See, what God is saying, Samuel, you need to understand that I made this system. I made the system of judges. It's my idea to have judges. I made judges because I wanted the judges to rule the people. I wanted judges to kind of oversee everyone. But in creating judges, I only wanted there to be one king. I wanted Israel to only call one entity king, to only call one thing or one God king, and that's the God of Israel. Samuel, do not be offended because they're not offending you, they're offending me. Because I wanted them to only call one person king, and that was me. But what they're asking is that they want to call someone else king. It's not enough to call God king or to only call him king. They rejected me. They don't want me, that I rule them as I see fit. They want what they want. They don't want me as a king. So no, Samuel, it is not you who they're rejecting. It's me. God says, what they're asking for today, give them. That they have treated me this way. He says in verse 8, since Egypt. Do you remember that, Samuel? Do you remember that I took them out of the land of Egypt? Do you remember that the 10 plagues that I pressed upon them? Remember that I took them out of slavery? Remember that I parted the sea? Remember the pillar of fire and the cloud above them? Remember that I demonstrated my power before them? That I took care of them? That I oversaw them? That I kept them well? And what they did is, at the very first moment that they got a chance, they went after other gods and they spit in my face. So no, Samuel, it's not you who they're rejecting, it's me. It's not you, Samuel. They've been doing this forever. They did it to me in the Exodus. They're doing it to me now. And you and I, we know in Romans, and Paul says God gave them over to their own desires of their own flesh. God handed them over. They've been doing this forever and they continue to do it. And sometimes we continue to do it today. It's the human nature of the whole thing. It's who we are within ourselves. It's the evil that lives inside of us. It's the sin that we're born with. No, Samuel. They abandoned me. They forsake me. So I tell you, Samuel, do what they ask. Give them what they want. And let me read verse 9. He says, now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. He says, God says, Samuel, make sure that they know the rights of the king. Make sure that they know what a king will exercise over them. Make sure they know how a king will rule over them. God was not happy. God was not content. But he gave it to the many. God was not happy with what they requested, just like Samuel wasn't happy with what they were requesting. But he gave it to the many. Have you ever heard the phrase, be careful what you ask for, because you might get it? This is exactly what's happening with Israel. They were asking for a king. They were asking for a king to come upon them. So God says to Samuel, give them what they want. As I read the story, as I look at it, and I look at the elders of this church, of Israel, they come to Samuel, and I think the initial request, these were smart people. These were good men. They had good intentions. They were men who were respected, who were looked up to. And what they saw is, they saw an injustice in Samuel's sons, and they wanted to rectify it. They wanted to make it better. And they all got together, as wise as they all were, and they together agreed that this was the right thing to do. This speaks to me, and it speaks to me in a way because it tells me that it's not always the majority who are correct. Not always is the majority correct. For years, this country suffered the plague of slavery and racism because the majority thought it was the correct thing to do. They even defended it with biblical context that was completely warped and taken out of context. So it tells me that not every decision that is made by a majority necessarily means that it is right. Sometimes we have to look at the appointed. You see, Samuel was appointed. This was what's given to him by God to do. God appointed Samuel for this position to do this. And then a majority comes and they question the decision of he who has been appointed by God. Now, I want to talk to you because you and I have been appointed. Right? It's not just me, but we've all been appointed. We've all been brought to this moment. We all live in this moment now. We have all been appointed. We all have a purpose that we live for, that we've been given, that we all have been appointed by God. Now, I want to focus on verse 5. I'm going to come back to this because I think verse 5 is the pivotal verse. Verse 5. They said to him, "You're old. and your sons don't follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, and this is the part, this is the emphatical part. Such as all the other nations have. What they were saying is so we can be like everybody else. They have a king, we should have a king. I believe that one of the worst things a parent can hear is to hear a son or a daughter say, I want to be like everybody else. To hear from a son or a daughter, to hear from someone, to hear from a child saying, I want to be like everyone else. Now, I'm not saying you verbally you might ever hear it, but you don't have to hear it verbally to understand that it's happening. Sometimes a child will never actually say it, but they'll kind of say it in certain things that they're doing. A child will never come up to you and say, I want to be like this person. Or then maybe they wouldn't even tell you they admire some kid at school, or they admire some entity or some person on television. But as you begin to see them act like the person, talk like the person, listen to the person, do things like the person does, you begin to realize that your child is losing their uniqueness. They are no longer being themselves, but they are now being assimilated to look like everybody else. Do you see what's happening there? It's not necessarily that they're telling you that they want to be this person, but in what they act, in the way that they wear their pants, and the music that they listen to, and the things they want to have that everybody else has, what they're telling you is that they don't want to be unique. They want to be like everyone else. And this is the same problem that we have, not just with children, not just with teenagers, but also with adults. That we also look at this world and we also desire some of the things that this world has, and we want them for ourselves, and we wish we can have them too. Our desires change. I have to have that car, I have to have that house, I have to have this, I have to have that, I have to live like this, I have to live like that. I want to show you guys a video. Kind of explains what I'm trying to say. I believe I used one similar to this a while back for a different sermon.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with a white shirt, the lady with a trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before. Now, here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear, and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door. Everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
It's humorous, it's a little funny. But at the same time, it's a little sad, isn't it? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, I would never do that. That wouldn't be me. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Now, it's an experiment, and what they're showing is the human condition that wants to assimilate, that doesn't want to stand out. They don't want to be the outlier. They don't want to be the sore thumb. They want to kind of look and follow the rules just as everyone else is doing. You've heard it. Well, so-and-so's going, so-and-so is doing it, they're wearing it, they're doing it, they're being it. And it's not just with our youth, it's not just with our young people, but it's us too. We desire the same things, and our example is that the things that we strive for are not for moral excellence, but for maybe financial excellence. 1 Peter 2:9. I want you to picture this as Israel is God's chosen nation. Israel is called out by God from slavery, and God, this is His chosen people. And God tells us the same thing in 1 Peter 2:9. Peter tells us that you are His chosen nation, a royal priesthood, a people for His own possession, that you may proclaim the greatness of Him who called you out of the darkness into His marvelous light. Now imagine God is telling this to Israel. And He showed it to them. He demonstrated His power to them. He said, I love you. You are my chosen nation. And I've taken care of you. And I brought you out of bondage. And I showed you and I demonstrated my power to you. Now be my people. And it's the same thing He's telling us, that we are a royal priesthood, a chosen nation, a blessed people. That we are taken from the darkness into light. And this is what He's telling us today. But you know what the reaction is? I want to be like everybody else. It's ultimately what we're saying. When we want to be like the world, we want to assimilate the world. When we look at a Christian and we look at a person of the world, a worldly person, and there's not much of a difference. What we're saying is that we are rejecting our holiness, because our holiness is to be separated from the rest of the world with a purpose. And this is the problem that Israel was doing. This is the problem with Israel, with what they were doing. They wanted to be like the rest of the world instead of being different, instead of being special, instead of being holy. They came to Samuel. They came to Samuel and they said, Samuel, we want to be like everybody else. Do you see the problem, church? You and I have been called to be like everybody else. What if, and I said it last week, I asked the question, what if we were called to live in these very moments, for these very moments, so that we can be different? But we can't be different when we're continually trying to be like the rest of the world. What if we were called to live in this very moment? If we are supposed to be light of the world, we have to be different, we have to stand out, because light stands out. God has a plan. God has a desire. You've been appointed for this very moment to live for Him, not to be like everybody else. We haven't been appointed to be like the rest of the world. We have been appointed and called to be different, to be holy, separated by God for a purpose. Stand up, church. Be light. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May He shine His face upon you. Until we congregate again. Bless us.